GM friends, welcome to the CoinGeek Weekly Livestream. It's me. I'm back. 3 weeks off. I think this is the longest break I've ever taken in my life, in under any circumstances, even though it doesn't feel like it's been a vacation. Jet lag, travel, saw 5 countries in 2.5 weeks, and did a whole bunch of good stuff. So really glad to be back. Good to be back in the hot seat, which is actually cool because climate control and velvet curtains are quite a pleasant experience relative to the rest of the universe. Here in sunny South Florida, it is, I think the correct temperature is hotter than balls outside, so it's really nasty. So if anybody wants to send me ice cubes, I can give you my P.O. box in the DMs. If you're watching live, first of all, thank you. You're my people. I appreciate it. We've been working extra hard to have the second half of this year's season be, the greatest half of all time, of all media. I don't know, something like that. But if you're watching live, please let people know that you're watching live, and that we're going to have questions, comments, blessings, cursings, gripes, or gropes right in the troll box, as long as you can get them past the enigmatic Mr. Alex Moon, who I'm delighted to talk to after a couple weeks too. So I'm not going to ramble a whole lot. And the reason is we have a lot to talk about, and we're going to be talking with, quite frankly, one of my favorite people in the whole space, one of the most independently minded, and one of the most open-thinking, clarifying alpha individuals that I know in the space, and also the guy who gave me a kick in the shorts to do this podcast at all. So the whole reason I'm on media as a Bitcoin person doing live streams, I actually deserve, the person who deserves the credit is Mr. Joshua Henslee, who will be joining us in mere moments. So, Mr. Moon, if you can go ahead and play the ad.
This is buybsv.com, the quick and simple way to buy Bitcoin SV. You can't miss it. It says a quick and simple way to buy BSV on buybsv.com. It's safe and secure. Within an hour, you'll own BSV digital assets, which means it's so quick and simple. So if you want to buy BSV, use buybsv.com. It does exactly what it says.
Hello, sir. How's it going, man?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to see you. It was good to connect with you in London and see you in person with a crew. Actually, let's talk about that for a few minutes before we get into. We got a bunch to talk about, but I would love your completely transparent, no holds barred feedback about the London Blockchain Conference. What'd you get done? What'd you think of the show overall? What was your favorite presentation? Let's go.
Yeah, I thought it was a great event. I mean, this is the conference I actually attended sessions the least, just because I wanted to network, because I haven't really been to an in-person event in 3 years. So from the networking and talking to new people, or people that have been around for a while that I just, have alts on Twitter or whatever, or, are not public, meeting them is great, and having discussions. And definitely some opportunities came up, which I'm excited about. But the energy was really high, and I thought that the rebranding to blockchain was good, because it gets more people in the door. And yes, of course, it was more BSV focused, but people seem to be interested. We'll see if any of that pans out, but I think it's much better. As far as presentations goes, trying to think which one. I mean, I didn't see too many. One thing that is reassuring, though, is that Craig still fills the room with his presentation. Yeah. People are always standing, all the seats are filled. So, that was encouraging to see. But I just think his content, unfortunately, is not too relevant today, because it's so future seeing. I feel like a lot of people will go back. Like today, people probably don't know what he's talking about, but in like 10, 20 years, they're going to be like, holy shit, I can't, this guy, look at what this guy was saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. It's like those Simpsons episodes. Anytime anything happens, you find an old Simpsons clip where they predicted it. So that's actually, I had a similar experience. I think you and I hosted where we were on stage 3 or 4 times each.
Oh, yeah.
I think I was on 4 times. So me and you might be tied for the most represented people on stage at the event. But yeah, I had a similar experience where it was like, yeah, I'm running around, I'm doing other stuff, but really I'm trying to shake hands, and you know, you get the exact same thing. Like, hey, I'm this particular NFT PFP on Twitter, but nice to meet you. I'm actually, I work at SAP or something, and it's like, wait, what? So yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. Yeah, no, good event. And I agree. Like London blockchain was a really good way to bring in people that don't have any preconceptions about Bitcoin, and then didn't have to have the political, what is Bitcoin conversation, right, and all of that. So good stuff. And it's been 2 weeks, which means there's like 50 new things to talk about that have spouted their own ecosystems. Is this hyperbitcoinization? Like what the hell is happening? So a little bit of background. 2 days ago, I think 2 days ago, he said, Kurt, I've got some alpha for you. Look into Bitmap.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, okay. I literally read about it. I fell asleep reading about it with putting my kids to bed. And by the time I woke up, it was literally like, Bitmap's a scam, but I bought a bunch of these, and this one sold for $12,000, and just all this freaking just inscriptions on top of inscriptions. Give me let's rehash the alpha, even though we're 48 hours late, which means we might as well be like at the retirement home at this point.
Yeah. So this guy, this is the third kind of anonymous character that's created a protocol on top of BTC that's kind of gone viral. So this one's called bitmap.land. Basically, you inscribe blocks. All you do is make an inscription, a text one on BTC of the block number .bitmap. That's all it is. But the idea is that this is a metaverse protocol that will leverage Bitcoin blocks since 2009 for whatever. So, people are coming up with all kinds of stuff. Right now, the popular thing to do is go to bitfeed.live, put in your block number, and see how it looks, because you see all types of metadata about the transaction, right? How many transactions were in it, how much volume, BTC volume, the average fee rate, this sort of stuff. And then people naturally are inscribing ones that have famous transactions in it. For example, right, the first transaction to Hal Finney, pizza transaction, the first where Ordi was deployed, this type of stuff. So the idea is that people, because you're using something that's immutable and what people perceive to be the longest proof of work chain, right? Most secure, their words, right? People are rallying around that concept, because it's much better to use something like that than to use somebody's server or their SQL database, right? Because that's obviously mutable, or doesn't persist over time. So the guy who made it, whoever he is, I think, even though it's so simple, I think there was a lot of thought that went into it about how, and it's gone crazy. When I told you about it, I think there were only, 10,000. Now, as we're speaking, I think there's probably over 220,000. So it's doubled in the last day. The number of holders have tripled in the last day. And yeah, nothing sold for as high as you said, but the highest sale has been 0.1 BTC. So
okay, but that's yeah,
it cost you $1. They made 1,000. So
sure, yeah, not bad, not a bad ROI for like 24 hours or whatever.
Correct. Yeah.
So, I mean, how much of this is just like Ordinals itself? I find fascinating because it's not even actually a new protocol. It's literally just hey, we're going to decide to count sats in this particular way, and so we'll just index them, and we'll agree that because we counted them this way, you've got ordinal number whatever, and that's a token. And I love how elegant and simple it is, because it's like you didn't invent something, you discovered something. It's like this emergent property of Bitcoin. And so then the inscriptions are the art on it. It's like, hey, I found a lucky penny that has the serial number. Now I'm going to paint on it and make something, now it's art. Now it's all these other things. With now doing the same thing with blocks. Like, what else can we? So this actually kind of reminds me of 6 or 7 years ago that people first talking about magic numbers, like kind of what the 21E8 concept came from too, that like, hey man, magic hashes are really cool. And I agree that they're cool too. Can everything be a collectible? Like at some point, does this start to become like, do you start to like create inflation or maybe even boredom around the notion of, how many things can we count and number and stick under the bed and act like are really cool? Or is this perpetual? Is it going to go exponential?
Well,
the hard nod.
We already answered that question, right? I mean, there was a lull before this Bitmap thing came out, and now, like I said, they doubled overnight. So it is going exponential. It is perpetual. Like I said, the 3 guys that did these things, all anons, right? But they came up with these very simple protocols that got adopted with no fundraising, no donations, no money, right? And they didn't sell anything either. So these guys have just made these things on Gitbook, and they just got adoption because people saw the value prop. And it's up to people and businesses to interpret it and do whatever they want with it. But I mean, Sats names, I think there's 300,000 of them. They're actually going to get passed because I think they started in February. They're going to get passed by Bitmap soon if they haven't already. And then of course we have BRC20s, which continues to be used and adopted, and has already been adopted on other chains too. So yeah, I mean, something's going to be next. But you just think about what happens when some of this stuff start happening at the same time. Because of these are text files, you're not seeing the congestion like you did with the
lightweight
when Ordi pumped back in May, and then you had people doing the images and files and stuff where the fees just got completely out of control. You're not seeing that. You might see that with this because there's only 800,000 blocks, right? So
sure,
when you get towards the end, you might see front running and that type of stuff occur. But yeah, I mean, this is just one thing. This is only one thing ongoing. What happens if something else came up?
Right.
Well, no one predicted Bitmap, right?
Right.
Obviously, no one last week was thinking, "Oh, I'm gonna buy some metaverse land," right?
No, it's true, but I guess my question is, what's the? I guess so. Taking one step back, there's been this conversation that this is what, like, a SAT is itself collectible because it is provably like it is an NFT, right? Your individually serialized SAT already has these properties, and this is something that, sure, that's interesting. Like that is a property of Bitcoin that I find intriguing, and it's one of the things that gives it value in the first place. But like, how many times can you extrapolate upon that concept before it ceases to continue to give you returns where it's like it makes me think of those memes where it's like the soy face like pointing at the thing. Like, does this just like, is there going to be 100 ways to count and measure your Bitcoins that all just like keep creating this exponential value? Like, it might. I'm skeptical, but I was skeptical. I mean, I've been skeptical this whole thing, and now it's like, all right, well, how many millions of dollars have I lost by being like, that's silly? So,
right.
I mean, am I nuts? Are we nuts? Like, is the entire economy just going to be based on rarity of a different counting mechanism against Bitcoin?
Well, I mean, like you said, that's just one attribute. I mean, there can be many, right? Like people, for example, that bitfeed.live site, they're putting in the blocks, and they were, inscribing them based off what the block looked like on that thing. So it's completely subjective, right? And that reflects, a principle in economics, the value is subjective. And that's why, the folks poo-pooing this stuff, I mean, it's just crazy because that to reject that sound concept is just, it's like rejecting demand and supply. Seriously.
Sure.
It's that fundamental. And the difference here is that we have one blockchain. Yes, we're talking about BTC. Oh, well, it is what it is. We have one blockchain that is getting adopted, that you have one database, and you have the ability for people to create things with even if you're doing text files, it's really not that expensive. So the ability to basically write something on a cave wall forever. Yep. And people obviously find value in that. And that's been proven. I mean, that's not new on BTC, right? Like you mentioned, we've done it on ETH, other blockchains, but because you can do it on Bitcoin, which again, I keep harping on this point, no one thought was possible before 5 months ago.
Right.
It hasn't even been 5 months.
Sure. No, I mean, it is just, it's fascinating. And I say this as someone who, like, I like history, I like art, and I like numismatics. You know, I'm literally like, I'm part of art societies, I'm part of numismatic societies. I sit and read about, like, in fact, cave art. I read about cave art in my free time. So, I mean, I get it. There's just this, I don't know, it's just wild to me to watch all this play out, because I've been the guy for 6, 7, 8 years now telling everybody, like, hey guys, Bitcoin can do this and this is going to be really cool, and people telling me, no way, man, like that's not the cool part about Bitcoin. And now it's become the cool part about Bitcoin on the Bitcoin that rejected me the hardest. And so it admittedly a little bit of a, like, you know, a moral crisis a bit for me to watch the, like, oh, okay, so whoever pivoted back to BTC for tokens first has you know, made this massive killing on whatever. Not to say that I have, you know, I've actually, I got some early inscriptions and some early BRC20. Like, it's fine. Like, I'm gonna, like, we're all gonna make it. but at the same time, it's I'm dabbling because I'm still just like, man, when does the knife in the back come, right? Because I'm just like, I'm waiting for the wake up to, like, complete, like, Rome is burning because you know, whatever, some BIP got pushed at midnight, and you know, and everybody updated it now and whatever. Which begs the question, the immutability and all this stuff. Like, at what point, you know, is the revolution so big that the, like, toxic authoritarian small blocker types, like, basically before they lose control of the fort here?
Yeah.
Is that coming? Is there still an existential risk? Or, you know, at what point do you say, like, sorry, there's just too much wealth, power, and cultural shift for them to do that?
Yeah, I mean, it might have already passed that point, honestly. And, you know, I don't think, I mean, because applying the example you just gave to just any parts of life, we can't be looking at the market that way, thinking it's going to crash. Like, those people have gotten pounded in the face for so long, right? Like, because life's not about that, right? I mean, you know, there's a quote in the Bible, I forget the specific one, about, be anxious for nothing, right? We can't be worried about that stuff because it's the same thing. Like, and this is why I'm starting to believe BTC won't die, at least as long as all these things exist, because even I've been thinking about this, a chain death is actually a code is law argument when you think about it, right? Because you're basically talking about asset seizure at the protocol level, which, you know, that's code is law. I mean, you know, and we already saw what someone will do in that situation. Well, they'll just hard fork the shit out, just like CZ alluded to, you know, just 5 short years ago, and Vitalik actually did, right? So I think no matter what happens, there's no way it's going to be tolerated. Whether you, I say the 2 fork names will be BTC NFT, which is the based one that continues, and they might as well raise the block size while they're at it, and then BTC MPC, which is still the digital lead. But I don't even think miners will go with that.
Good name.
I don't think the miners will go with that because, I mean, the amount of money, right? I mean, and this is the points I've been bringing up, is that this time it is different. You know, 6 years ago you didn't have any fees. Now you have fees. Granted, they're not a lot, but they've gotten a taste of it. So, and then these guys, I think you've said this, they're publicly traded now. Back then they were basically folks in their basement. Even if you had a data center, it's probably an individual with an LLC or whatever. But now these guys are big corporations. There's just no way. I mean, a fork event, you know, we could talk about the BlackRock thing, but a fork event, I think, is going to be taken very seriously, not this kind of neckbeard revolution of social engineering and bullshit, because, you know, there's too much money around this time. And BTC hadn't even hit 5 figures yet, right? It was still like 3 to 7K, right? So it was just starting to hit that price back then.
Right. It was right in it was probably 3. I don't remember exactly where it was, like, when the split happened, but it was like that week it was still in, like, the 3 zone. So no, it is. It's fascinating. especially in light of like the one set ordinals protocol was built here in the South Florida Citadel by people that I intimately share Bitcoin experiences with on a daily basis. And I look at the way the culture has shifted, even as much as like I truly see like BTC ordinals and the Doge and Litecoin people, like I see all of them as allies. I in fact I tweeted it today. Like your blockchain is your tribe, but the ordinals are like nomads that are, like, hey, we're like this people group that are like, I can break bread and under any tent, right? And I think that that's a healthy attitude to have. But it also undermines my typical stance of like there can only really be one blockchain,
right?
Because what we're trying to do is actually absorb all the value of the earth and the internet and all this other stuff. And now it's like it's a little bit, especially with I'd love to get your feedback on recursive ordinals on BTC, because I think that's another one that is like, hey, here's something really to think about. But
well,
like,
it's not, because we've been doing that for 4 years, but they're just wrapping up some fancy computer science term for basically saying I'm referencing other data that's on chain. That's all it is, right? I mean, I did that on BSV with the first 1,000 or so. It doesn't reference an ordinal, but it references another file, like an audio file, right? Or people have been doing this a run, where you just reference another NFT, and like we've been doing that too. Now, I do think that concept for sure is going to take off, right? I mean, because I have been, one of the reasons I hadn't, obviously with the fees, but I hadn't done something like that on BTC is because the protocol, as far as I could tell, the ordinals one on their side doesn't support it. But with this, it would. I mean, it's basically like Map, like with the open social stuff. It's the same concept. Yeah.
Right. You just declare a standard and then you all point to the same standard, and then all of a sudden you have a standardized.
Yeah, that's gonna be, people gonna do that, because then people can do combo files, right? You can do an image and a simple one is like a CD, right? You have the audio file, and then you reference an image for your album cover, and then you can do multiples, right? Which, back when you got CDs, sometimes they had pages, right? In the with the track list, they had like pages and interviews and stuff like that. So people can do all kinds of stuff, and that goes back to what you said at the beginning. I mean, no one's done that yet, right? So. And then you think about it. Now we come out. I mean, we get in the crazy. I mean, we just got to accept it, man. We're getting to a fundamental Satoshi Craig Wright argument, which is, I think he said, if there can be a market for it, there will be.
Yep.
Yet in BSV, we're still sitting there saying, "Oh, it's all bullshit. It's all stupid. It's all dumb." Meanwhile, we're staying poor. The price ratio continues it goes past 1,000. It's going to 1,500, probably 2,000. Not financial advice. And that's happening for a reason, right? Because we're sitting there saying on the sidelines, "Oh, it's all stupid." Meanwhile, the other guys, they're just they're the kids out in the yard having fun. We're the ones sitting and saying, "Oh, well, I can't wait till it rains on them." Well, that's why that kid stays fun poor, and those guys are actually having fun, and they're rich fun, right? So it answers your question. Someone's going to do that with an album, and it's going to sell. But the thing is, right now, you can own the NFT of the album cover, and you can own the song. Whereas before, a CD was just everything. So now we're going to have a market for all that stuff. You see what I mean? So it's going to get, I mean, like I said, no one thought about BRC20. It is different. It is a different token standard. No one thought about Paymail's on chain. We should have done that shit a long time ago. Still haven't done it. And then Metaverse Land. I mean, these guys have gotten more adoption on BTC with small 1 megabyte blocks for Metaverse than anybody has ever before. With Facebook, Apple, tons of money pouring into it. They ain't got none of the adoption that this one non-Twitter account did in 4 fucking days. And we're sitting here saying, "Oh, this is bad."
Yeah. Well, what does it indicate? I mean, what is the, like, what does one in our position? I mean, you and I are both entrepreneurs in the space, totally irrespective of the fact that we are like commentators and whatever else. Like, we both have businesses here. Like, we want to make money by serving clients and using specific blockchain tools. But how do you respond to this? What is business Joshua say completely outside of everything else?
Yeah. I mean, like you said, I started inscribing back in February, right? I mean, on both chains. I haven't played around with Litecoin, but Yeah, I mean, why not, right? I mean, there was already tools put out there for people to even use your BSV to inscribe. So on
Yep.
BTC, right? So
Yep.
this stuff has been out there, but no one's looking at it because we're thinking, oh, you know, someone's gonna sign, which is never gonna happen, or someone's gonna win a court case, or someone's gonna bring in enterprise adoption, which is a perpetual soon, probably till we're all skulls at this rate. I'm being facetious, but it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
It's just way down the line, right?
Sure.
But yeah, so it's silly, right? I mean, we just gotta accept where things are headed. I do believe it's gonna end up on one chain, but the thing is, I don't know which chain that's gonna be. The more and more I think about it, right? You know, we need a scalable. We're gonna need it because if my thesis is right, more and more people are going to create, and BTC can't support it. But we haven't reached that point yet. We saw a glimpse of that a month or two ago. But it's just going to happen again, right? It's like water that's boiling in a pot, and you turn the heat down, and then the heat rises again, and it starts to overflow. Like, it's going to happen,
Right.
but you need a bigger. At that point, you need a bigger pot. So the big question is, what happens at that point? You know, some folks are saying, oh, it's not so simple to just raise the block size. I don't know about that, because I think it is, at least in the short term. But when you start doing more, right, that's going to be the question, because the market is going to demand certain things like script, which BTC doesn't have, or, you know, some of this other stuff. So
Sure.
it's going to be fascinating. But yeah, today, I mean, people, like I said, I mean, I've been saying this on Twitter and my YouTube, you need to be inscribing. Like, if you're not doing that, seriously, like, because like the point again, and you know, someone that has been talking about this is Jack Lew, right? Which is a very controversial figure within this space, but he's been spot on about all this stuff. He made a point recently that if you're have a plan of what to do for a week, there's no way you could have been ready to do something like this, right? Because obviously 7 days ago, no one knew they were going to be going to Unisat and typing in, looking up a block number and typing it in and hoping and flipping it. You see what I mean?
Right.
And two people or one person, if they had the same, made 1000x doing this. We know from traditional finance, you're not supposed to be able to make those types of returns in that short amount of time. So the question is, why does this keep happening? Because we've seen this with JPEGs, we've seen this with Ordi, we've seen this with a bunch of other things, with Bitcoin itself. I mean, it's going to keep happening. It's not going to stop. We just have to recognize that. I mean, even on BSV, it happens. I mean, the mint cost is so low. If you sell it for 1 million sats, that's like 250,000 x. You know what I'm saying? So that's
right.
what
Even though you made 19 cents, but as a percentage, it was
right.
Right. No, for sure.
Yeah. So this is where we're going, and honestly, it is the future that I want. The ability to basically make anything and find a customer without any type of investment, infrastructure is exactly the type of future that I honestly think Satoshi envisioned. It's just playing out in a way that a lot of people are not comfortable with because they can't see past the elementary stuff.
Sure. Well, and so that's a thing. And I'm a bit of the same. Like, for me, it's people are just like, oh, Kurt's bitter because of X, Y, and Z. And it's like, well, no, I actually lived through, like, I'm the guy who lived in a house and then somebody rolled in and ran it over with a tank. And I'm a little bit like, hey guys, by the way, every once in a while, the bastards come through and roll over your shit with a tank. Right. And like, that's just a reality. But at some point, I also don't want to be that bitter guy who, it happened to me once. And if I spend the next 50 years of my life just bitching about it, I'm just victimizing myself in perpetuity. Right. So, but the question is a few things. So we have like Ordinal's wallet, for example, continues to be DDoS attacked. By who? Like it sounds like a Greg Maxwell to me, right? Like it's your classic small blocker, like I hate this thing.
Or it could just be their competitors, because there's like 8 marketplaces, right? That all have an incentive to do it.
Right. It's just Jack Lew.
or Unisat or Magic Eden, right?
Right. Yeah. It's all that, right. It's all the BSV people now moving to BTC and becoming way more toxic because of it. But that kind of thing, like, you look at it and say, man, it still just feels like building your house on sand, right? It's like it almost strikes me as like the narcissist X who you're like, well, things are looking a lot better over there again. Maybe I should make my way back. It feels a little bit like going back to your abusive X. Maybe it did all change because Bitcoin is not a human, right? It is actually just a conglomeration of all the humans that are using it. And so that culture is more fluid. But what do you think this actually looks like? Now, you talk about block size and script and some of this other stuff. But let's say BTC, what if they have a 20 megabyte block size limit a year from now? Because like the market just demanded it. And everybody finally, everybody's pulled up those damn tweets between like Adam Back and Peter Will and all these people from 5-6 years ago saying like, yeah, here's all the reasons why this would work. They could just like totally renege on the last, like the whole Bitcoin civil war and be like, yeah, this was actually my idea. Look, what do you think the odds are that happens? That just the culture just pivots? And then where does it put the BSV people?
Well, yeah, I mean, I personally believe that is a highly likely outcome. However, I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's less likely to happen organic than if the devs actually the core devs try something. I think it's more likely the core devs try something and then in response, they raise it. You see what I mean? That makes more sense to me. Because it's kind of like a purging, right? Like it would be like, all right, you guys are done, right? I mean, because at that point you're getting attacked. And then once you get rid of them, it's like, oh, well, shit, we can do whatever we want now.
Right.
As far as do we want to?
Well, it's like a terrorist attack. It's like, and I mean, not to the crime aspect of it, but it's literally like from a political standpoint, it's the like let's see what happens if we like invade the Capitol, for example. Like, what is the fallout?
It's asset seizure. It is, right? Because I mean, I don't know how many people view it that way, but it's the same. If someone destroys your stuff, that implies that they owned it, because if I own it, I can destroy it. So if they destroy it, that's asset seizure, right? Again, which is something that Craig has been trying out with the law or whatever. But and they say that's bad, but the core devs are openly threatening to basically destroy all these people's NFTs and assets on chain.
Yeah, we will crush you. Alex, let's bring that tweet back up from Andy. He's asking, do you think BTC Ordinals could be the trigger for a big move of Ordinals users into BSV down the road? Are Ordinals BSV's Trojan horse penetrating BTC? I think the second part of the question is an obvious yes. Like the primary entrepreneurs that have made money in BTC Ordinals are BSV people.
But
so
I don't think that means that's a Trojan horse.
Yeah, that's more like expatriation.
I think depending on the team, and people can kind of figure this out. I've given more concrete examples in person, but depending on the team and what happened when they were here and how they act today, I think people can infer about this Trojan horse theory, right? Certain teams I don't think give two shits about BSV. Some may still care. Others may think, well, this still ends on scalable blockchain. Whether that's raised block size BTC or BSV or whatever, right? I don't think there's a Trojan horse intentionally. I think it's a simple, oh, well, there's money to be made over here, and we kick the shit out of everybody because we've actually been working on this stuff for 4 years. So, and that's what happened, right? And to answer your question about BSV people, that's the obvious path, I think, in the short term, because that's not by accident, right? The reason they were able to go over is because they were already doing it, and none of them were. That's why they're beating them down. That's why they're first to everything, right? So, and they're going to continue to be first, right? For even Haste just is doing basically a sale of parcels for their block. They just announced it. They're charging 0.01 BTC. They've already made 3. They've already sold 3, so they've already made $600 in a span of like 10 minutes. Right on BTC. And they're the first ones to do that. A BSV company, not, you see what I mean? Yeah.
Right. Well, it's interesting. So, I mean, one of the theories for a long time from the BTC crowd has been that like all altcoins are just test beds. That like any good idea that is had outside of BTC will just make its way to BTC and just be more valuable there. So
I would change that statement to say Bitcoin, because we don't know at this point, and this is fundamentally a Daniel Kravitz argument.
Yeah.
which is what he says, hold all forks, right? Because
Yeah.
at the end, you don't care about the outcome. And that's kind of how I feel, right? Because
Sure.
if we have assets on these different chains, we don't have to care, because one of them's going to win. I think it's already set. I think this is actually the future that we've been saying. It's already set. We don't know which chain, but we know it's going to be some version of Bitcoin protocol. I think.
Sure.
That's
Yeah. Well, and it's funny. I've actually echoed the same thing. Like anytime anybody's actually asked me for investment advice, which I don't talk about like on the show, I don't tell anybody to buy anything. I don't tell people what to do with the portfolios. But when people say like, well, Kurt, what should I do though? You know, it's always like, why is that always the conversation? But I always default and I always say, you know what? I think that the most reasonable thing to do, if you think Bitcoin is a good idea, hold the basket. And if you're going to spend 20, whatever it is, 25 grand on a BTC, then go buy, spend another $200 and get one BSV and BCH. And then you have a completely depoliticized portfolio. And then you can think rationally about the rest of the conversation. In fact, like the people that are all in any one thing are probably people you shouldn't talk to about any advice about anything anyways. And so, because it fundamentally makes you religious, or some kind of zealot. It's like, it's the same thing. It's like, well, should you ask a Catholic priest about the intimate details of Judaism? And it's like, well, I mean, maybe, but you're going to get a biased response out of them, right? And so, yeah, it's just fascinating. It's a fascinating thing watching like the arbitrage of ideas and everything else going between the Bitcoin forks, or among the Bitcoin forks, I suppose. Question here from Brian Stockwell. What are we talking about here? How to write different data types to a database where each record is owned and transferable? Yeah, can we like zoom out? Like we are definitely having an inside baseball conversation today. Yeah. Let's go for it.
The simplest way I explain the ordinals is out. I try to avoid talking about the individual SAT and that stuff, because I think that's really inside baseball, as you said. Ordinals is basically a global, an NFT protocol with global serial numbers, right? So if we think about, trading cards or whatever, the trading card industry is actually moving in this direction where they're starting to release packs, and some of them have a serial number. So it can tell the market, hey, these things have a fixed however many supply, right? So maybe there's only 10 of these, there's 10 cards, serialized 1 through 10. That's what these are. They have a global serial number based off ordering in a block. So if you were the first inscription, you started at 0. Whatever inscription they're at now on BTC, 13 million. That's the 13th million NFT has the number 13 million on it. So that adds yet another property to these things that someone might find valuable, right? Because depending on when your birthday is, or your dad's birthday or whenever, you might find a specific number more valuable than the other person. So you'll be willing to pay them a price for it. I mean, this is like simple economic stuff. But again, we got folks saying this is bad or scam somehow. It's ridiculous. But yeah, and yes, they are transferable. But yeah, it's a ledger entry that you can trade or send to somebody else. You can send it, you can sell it, you can do whatever you want with it because you own it. That's the whole point.
Yep. No, and it's simple, right? Like this is a classic human. I mean, this is actually how we determine like the very beginning of culture at all, is the fact that people like collect things, or they put everybody should Google the Solutrean hypothesis. And what this is there's in prehistoric France, there are bones that are buried with these long flint spearheads, beautiful pieces of art. And they're buried in a certain pattern. So you bury these flint spearheads with your dead as like a, farewell. We don't know any other details about the culture. And we have found similar style, both the spears and the way that they're laid with dead bodies in the Americas. And they're from, I don't remember exactly, 20 or 30,000 years ago. Very, very long time ago. But what that indicates is that people will take opportunity cost. So picture, 30,000 years ago, a spearhead is a very important tool in your life. And so to bury it with somebody is an indication of, hey, this matters, and matters more either for ceremonial reasons or whatever else. But whatever we're doing, we're doing this as opportunity cost. And so to do anything like that with your Bitcoins is the exact same thing. It's to say that, hey, this thing is valuable, but I think it's more valuable for me because of this. And that can be some artistic value, it can be some numismatic value, or it can be whatever stupid bullshit you value about magic numbers or whatever else. Like Bitcoin at the end of the day is a stupid magic number game that we have all decided is fun to play for economic reasons.
Yeah.
And we're crazy ass primates at the end of the day, where we just kind of like we ascribe value to the stars or the whatever, the planetary alignments or the month you were born or your Myers-Briggs or your Enneagram, and there's all these other things that people break these things down into, and it's just truly fascinating. So I'm getting a little bit of let's get through a couple of these questions too. We'll pivot a little bit from the ordinal stuff. How the move from TAAL to go to 1 sat per transaction, it's actually 1 sat per byte, FYI, that was reported wrong initially, will affect the fee market and other miners such as GorillaPool. I'll answer this very quickly. GorillaPool is not changing its fees. We will change our fees if we believe there is more profit and opportunity for us to change our fees. I completely support TAAL doing it. Like, by all means, like set the basic fee at the floor. There's some economic discovery to be, at least we're playing on the whole field at that point, right? One sat per byte across the entire chain. Like, cool. I would guess, based on the decision, the fact that it was a random day in June to make an announcement, that maybe they have a customer that is requiring such a thing.
We hope so.
just saying it. I don't know. I know a lot of people think I'm in war room meetings with all the the C-suite over here. I'm not. GorillaPool will keep its fees at what they are unless we have an opportunity to compete for, somebody wants to send us 1 billion transactions a day. We'll discuss it. But that's it. But that's also kind of the beauty of BSV. Like, policy settings are policy settings, and everyone can do what they want. And if you make the wrong decision for too long, you die. So welcome to capitalism. Any other questions you want to bounce through here? I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about Tether news and some other stuff that's kind of busting around today. Are BTC core devs planning a soft fork? Sorry, I haven't been around as much lately. I feel like they must have a few contingency plans they've kicked around, but no. I mean, they've talked about it a little bit. It's like there's definitely been
there's no plan.
There's no BIP yet.
The fees needs to get to the point where sending a normal transaction is so cost prohibitive for them to start getting pissed off again and think about doing something. Which, based off this conversation, I think is inevitable.
Brandon Ward. The real question is that do the BSV people who make money on BTC put that back into the BSV side of their business, or just double down and leave BSV?
I mean, that's subjective, right? I mean, it depends on what that person does. I mean, if they're going for the Kraywitz strategy, then that you could leverage that to basically get equal coins on all forks or something like this. Or people have different personal goals. But that question, honestly, people don't need to listen to what myself or Jack Lew or any of these other people in BTC are saying to know what's going to happen, right? If forget what I'm saying, forget that advice that people should go and scribe whatever they can. Okay, fine. If you don't do it, the fact is you've already lost to people that did, right? We can agree on that, right? The people that inscribed in January, February, March have way more money today, even if it's paper terms, than the people that do today, right? That did not do that, correct? They have less assets, less BTC, less sats.
Right.
Maybe they gambled, who knows? But typically the answer is they have way more. So if you continue to do it and you make more, you will always beat the person who didn't do it. It's the same thing, right? If you quit or you didn't play the game, you lost. You get it. You definitely didn't win, right? You can't win without playing, right?
Sure.
So if you don't do it, you're out. You're done. You're out of the game. You're going to lose because people are going to do it. And guess what? They will come back to BSV and they're going to rack anyone who didn't do this. They're going to be completely fucking obliterated, right? Because they're going to be capitalized with no debt.
Right.
Right. No investment. None of these debt for equity swaps that have been happening. Right. None of that stuff. Right. And they have positive balance sheet and now they have scalable blockchain. Who do you think is going to win?
Yep. So it's funny. I tweeted this the other day. I said, look, there's 3 scenarios how this plays out. Like the entire blockchain economy plays out in one of 3 ways. 1, BSV wins. 2, somebody adopts most of the good ideas in BSV and they win. Or 3, blockchains weren't a good idea and we all lose. That's it. And so
3 is like La La Fantasy Land. It's like that's
yeah,
out.
It's less than 1% in my opinion. And right now I think the other 2, like it's better than 50-50 in favor of the number 2 option.
Right.
And so, you know, like what does it take for BSV to win at this point? Which is what I'm sure, you know, like our fans on this show and the whole thing, like what do we do for BSV to win? And I've been saying for literally forever, like if you have a business or you have even a potential business, if you have a business idea that benefits from extreme data integrity or from global, really inexpensive payments, so that's your first premise. You need to come up with a business that requires those things. And secondly, you need to acquire customers very aggressively. And I've seen almost nobody attempt to acquire customers aggressively. Now there's a couple of exceptions, but conceptually, those are the first two things. Find customers that need X, or find people that need X and turn them into your customers. And like I've seen basically nobody do that because I think there's a lot of laziness from people that are like, Craig will sign and then my BSV will be worth $1,200 or whatever else. But what do you think? I mean, from here now, like the culture has completely changed. There's a whole bunch of new fish in the water and the whole thing. Like how has that changed, and how do you think we need to modify our thesis from the BSV side in your opinion, Joshua?
Yeah, we got to do something that hasn't been seen before. I would say, I friend, I don't know how you say it, respectfully disagree with what you said. I think that was probably true before Ordinals. But because it's contradicted, right? Because let's look at the Twitter account Blockamoto who made bitmaps, right? Yeah. I think he might have made 0.bitmap. I would hope he has that back in which is the Genesis block back in June 3rd. How much do you think he could sell that today?
Yeah, I mean something a lot more than what it cost to make it, for sure.
I would bet that number is something that he could retire on and never have to work a day in his life again. What is today? The 20th? 17 days. The guy who did Ordi, right? He didn't issue it, but I'm sure he minted some. He probably minted enough to where he doesn't have to work a day in his life. That happened on March 8th.
Right.
None of this involved what you just mentioned. They did actually get customers in a sense that they got adoption, but not paying customers, right? They created something, right? I think this is a Ryan Charles quote. Someone had asked him, like, how do you think we make $1 billion company? And it's so simple, but it's so true. He's like, you create something that's worth $1 billion.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Three guys, Sats names hasn't gotten there. I think it will. 3 guys have created something that's probably going to, in market cap terms, is going to be worth billions. Right. Ordi hit it in 2 months. Right. So no, you just have to make something and that people find valuable. So we don't, and that's where BSV's gone wrong, right? Is this idea of pitching to customers that don't exist. Like, if you don't hold the coin, you don't matter. We need to stop trying to sell to people that don't have the coin. They're fucking irrelevant. Seriously, like what? How many times have you actually gotten someone to go get BSV in a person to person? I know I haven't. Never. Every time I have this conversation with someone who doesn't have the coin, it always ends the same. 100%. It's pointless. Why am I wasting my time? No, the people that have it, right? Go sell to them. I made this example. Sure. It's like if I'm If I got spicy food, I'm not gonna go fucking pitch to people who don't like spicy food. It's crazy, and try to convert them. What? I mean, this is basic stuff, right? Customer acquisition costs. Your customer acquisition cost should be like 100 sats.
Right.
Which is, we can't even calculate that in fiat terms. You see what I mean?
No, for sure.
Right.
Well, I talk about this too. It's the, go where your customers are. That's like the Jeff Bezos thing. Like, let's lose money for a decade by acquiring, but as long as we acquire customers, right? But then you get to flip. You get like the Henry Ford. Like, well, if I would have asked people what they would have wanted, they would have said a faster horse, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to balance like these two ideas. Like, okay, we do need to disrupt all kinds of things that are wrong with the economy, but you also can't throw the entire economy, up and not get anybody's business, right? So it's such a razor's edge to skate on, but you're right. I think, BSV has been telling people what it needs for a lot of years without actually asking, well, any of the questions about what it wants. What does the economy want? And frankly, other than nonsense collectibles, it wants almost nothing. And so, and this is short term, in my opinion. I mean, short term, as in like 15 years from now, right? But what people want to do is they want to acquire something that nobody else has, because there's a scarcity aspect to having and holding this thing.
Yeah.
And so the follow-up question becomes, why do I want to hold this thing? Like, what does it do for me? Do I need to flip it in 30 days and I have become a millionaire, and that's the thing? Or is this, I'm holding it for a generation because in 50 years, like, Bitcoin micropayments are going to be a problem that actually, or a solution to a real problem in the economy? It's like, there's a lot of what ifs at the end of this, which is why guys like Peter Schiff have done a really good job saying, like, Bitcoin is nonsense for like a decade now.
Yeah.
Oh, now he's walking around with an ordinal hat on, right?
Yeah.
So
now he's a power user.
Yeah.
And he's used the tech to make money. Right.
Yep.
So it is converted one of the biggest people have been opposed to it. And no one sold him.
I mean, I kind of did.
Sorry?
Schiff? I mean, I kind of did. I convinced him. It was my whole show is convincing him that tokenized gold is a good idea. And it finally clicked. And now he's,
He did a JPEG collection, though.
Well, of gold.
Yeah.
or pictures of gold. Yeah. He's one of those technicality guys. You can tell.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah. We can do the question.
Yeah, we got a few to get through in 6 minutes. Why did Joshua come back from the London Blockchain Conference more positive about BSV than when he went to the conference?
Yeah. So the reason is because I had conversations with people. It wasn't stuff, sadly, it wasn't stuff that I only saw like 5 presentations, but it was conversations with people and, talking with folks who I did not know or who I hadn't seen in a while, and talking, because when you have these face-to-face, it's completely different than emails or, social media engagement. So, and then, people obviously will say more when in a setting where you're not being tracked or whatever. So that's why. It's just because, we get, the BSV community gets a lot of shit, some of it rightfully so, some of it unwarranted. But most people are good. Most people are not crazy. And most people are trying to do the right thing and are trying to use this tech to push forward and make some money and make things better.
Yeah, for sure. I just want so, all right, another question, but as we transition questions, I just wanted to point out, like, we're having a green day, and it's the first time we've seen a big Tether pump in a while. It's like Tether announced, like, hey, there's $250 million worth of new Tether hit the market all of a sudden, and now green BTC. So more of that nonsense for the bucket shop economy and everything else on the exchanges, which are also being proven to be a scam by the on-chain trading economy. So love it. You'll love to see it. Josh, do you think that all of this is because of the liquidity, like the success in ordinals and everything else? Is it primarily liquidity, or is it something else?
I mean, that's a big factor because they're still, what they're doing, they're still, I mean, I would argue, I mean, it's crazy, right? Because those 3 examples I keep bringing up, BRC20 SATs names and Bitmap, do not and never have existed in any form on BSV. So those are new on BTC. So, but you could argue that the reason those guys decided to create there was because of the liquidity. So I think that's a big factor. I think it's manpower too. But that's, yeah, I mean, that's a big factor, but I mean, it is what it is, right? I mean, the market has continuously rejected big block Bitcoin, and it will continue to do until it needs it.
Yeah, for sure. What has happened with Xoken Labs Vega node implementation developed in India? Jackson Lasky talk about this. Anybody know? Not a lot of people will know. I am one of the very few people who even could conceivably know, because in order to use their tool, you basically need to be a mining pool. We worked with Nathan Manny, who's the guy who runs, like invented it, built it, and all this stuff. I actually think Xoken is super cool. Problem is there's 2 pools on Earth that even have the capability to run it, and both kind of have a proprietary. Like I'm like one of them is my pool, and we're working on our own stuff. Like we built Jungle Bus, which kind of undermines like running the Xoken stuff at all. And there's reasons to run it. When we attempted to run it, it was like once you get something into production, it's a little bit like you start to figure out what you do and don't like about it. And ultimately we have very, very limited resources and didn't ultimately go down the path. But I don't have any criticisms of it. What we really need is for other people to build pools. If we had 5 or 6 pools, it would be really cool if 1 or 2 of them were trying to run Xoken, and the other 2 were running, maybe a proprietary version of Teranode and, whatever else. Like, I think every pool should have its own proprietary node that is like based on the reference client, and then we're all competing there. But the economy is just not competitive enough. So I think it's really cool solution to a problem that doesn't have enough economics behind it, unfortunately. Next question, please. Has transaction throughput increased on BSV? What happened with Teranode at the conference? Well, that's a 2-part question. Transaction throughput is, probably as an average over the last 6 months is probably down, but the record-breaking numbers are considerably up. So, like there's been a lot of improvements network-wide and with tooling and all kinds of other things. And so I think we've had a $50 million transaction day, I think is the new record. As for Teranode, a lot of people may or may not know Steve Shatters is no longer with Enchain. He's like an independent contractor still working on something that's out of my wheelhouse, unfortunately. But so there was not a Steve Teranode presentation like there had been for the last few. The good news is the Teranode team includes a couple of people that are super talented, really, really good. Like in my opinion, the Teranode team has never been stronger. You've even got Calvin tweeting about it, like, hey, we hit one point. I think to quote him, the people running it are too big of pussies to say that they hit the numbers that they hit. Which is the right attitude. That's frankly the attitude I'd like out of Calvin on some of this stuff. But Teranode is actually in a pretty good spot, but I am not the guy in a position to make announcements about it. So we'll let that roll out. But the things that I do know about Teranode are super bullish, and I'm really excited to see where it's at. So next question, if we got them, we can go a minute or 2 over because I do what I want. What's up with Teranode? That's what's up with Teranode. Got some good people working on it. Good stuff all around. Will GorillaPool build a gorilla jungle and banana farm in the Bitcoin metaverse?
Dude, yeah, that's what I mean, right? Like, Kurt, you need to go do what Hayes just did.
Sure, provide
tooling. People will give you money hand over fist, and you never went and asked them, right? You see what I mean? Like, it's just...
just say it, man.
You find a block. I mean, there's plenty out there. There's still 80%, maybe 70% after this meeting. Just inscribe one, pick a number you like, because there's plenty of 6. I think all that's left is 6 digits now. Pick one and just make it Banana Land or whatever. Brand it. Right. You guys got great branding, and just sell them for BSV. Dude, you fucking sell out and make some money.
No, for sure. I'm playing with them. Let's
actually, it should be a block you mind, right? That's even better, right?
I mean, if we could, yeah. I mean, that's that would be extra super cool. But we have way not enough hash power to mine a BTC block.
Well, I saw 2 people have solo mined in like the last 4 months.
Yeah, but the odds, those are like, that's like that accountant that beat Michael Jordan in a game of one-on-one that one time. Sure, conceptually, yes, I like the idea, but it is very, very, very unlikely that would happen.
This is a good question, and I've actually had to inform a community member about this in a not so nice way. The price going down, yes, is a problem. I don't like it. I think it's bad. However, I can just say that I have not had issues earning in this economy. So yes, the price does matter. It needs to go up because the lower it goes, the worse the mining issues, especially with this TAAL announcement, which I think is not good. Unless they actually have a customer, which in the past, people like that have been allergic to customers. So until we see the throughput, I'm going to be skeptical of the dropping the fees. But there's so many ways, man. I mean, it's just, you got to actually use it, and it's so easy to use it. Like I said, I mean, if you're going to stick here, which I do, we're dabbling at this point, but there's so many ways, especially, I mean, it's so easy to just create something and, you commoditize anything. And, like I said, it's just because someone makes something and sells it to somebody doesn't mean it's a scam, right? Because it's P2P, right? Like if I sell you something, it has nothing, it's nobody's business. Like this crazy people criticizing what someone's going to buy with their own damn money. It's like, dude, you want to buy, use your own money. You probably don't have any. That's why you think like that. Like seriously, it's ridiculous, right? If I want to go buy some BRC20s, let me go do what I want. If someone wants to get wrecked and buy at the top, let them go do what they want. But the reality is BTC Bitcoin is the most appreciated asset in human history. So that kind of answers the point you said earlier, Kurt. Is this going to continue? Well, it has for 14 years. It went from 0 to 26,000. Even if you, with all the pumps or whatever, right? It doesn't matter. From 2009 to today, it's up in a number that we cannot calculate in our heads. I'm not saying that that's going to continue, but what's on chain will continue in that way.
Interesting. Yeah, to that, I was just going to say, like, this is the follow-up question. Who will the SEC go? So I have such mixed feelings about Gary Gensler. On the one hand, he's really is acting like, kingmaker, piece of trash kind of guy. But at the same time, it's really hard to defend anybody that he's after because, like, sorry, most of the economy are scammers. Is there a balance here? Like, at what point, what are your thoughts on the whole SEC thing? What's going on lately?
I can't figure it out, man. I mean, the biggest thing for me was the library treatment. I actually did a video about that because what was in there was very interesting. Mm-hmm. What it looks like to me is that they're laying the groundwork. They're basically going after all the little folks and building the case so that when they do go after, if they do, because they haven't done anything yet, really and truly, when they go after bigger ones, it's going to be an open and shut case, right? So whatever they have with ETH and Ripple, that remains to be seen. That's been dragged out. I think probably because Ripple's the top whatever coin. But it's curious why they would parallel go after something small like library. And the stuff in there is very damning, and it makes it very clear what is a security. So I don't know who they're going to go after next, but that's what I think is going on. My issue with them is they've been a paper tiger because they, like I said, no one's actually gotten punished for any of this stuff. So, it'll be curious to see what happens with Coinbase and Binance. My thoughts are because if it was a 1-2 punch, that they're semi-serious. But, I don't know.
Yep, it's tough. Why don't we just start our own tether and pump BSV price with that?
I mean, there's no demand, right?
Right. You gotta. So this is what I always tell everybody about money laundering. Like you can only launder a fraction of the amount of actual volume that exists. But
we see how some of these old crypto arguments are becoming irrelevant now, right? Like I think the SEC, Coinbase, Binance, Tether, all this shit is irrelevant. I honestly do not care. Like when I saw that announcement and the prices dump, I was like, I don't understand why this is happening. I mean, I do because this is what other people are thinking. But where I'm at is like the on-chain stuff, all this stuff we've been talking about, happened outside of that system. And it hasn't. BTC price has not gone up during all this. So Tether, we don't give a shit. We don't care. Tether can fucking print. They can finally get taken down. They can do whatever. It doesn't matter. CZ can go to jail. Armstrong can go to jail. Hopefully, all these guys can go to jail. Right? It doesn't matter because I can still broadcast a transaction. And it's going to get mined.
Right.
As long as I can do that, as long as blocks are getting mined, none of that other stuff matters. And that's where we want to go.
Yep. 100%. SEC sues the Ethereum Foundation by Q4 2023. Under or over?
I mean, if they dump their bags first, then
right. See, I agree. I think they've had a very weird soft spot for Ethereum, and that indicates to me exactly that.
Yeah, they got big bag.
Yep. Man, any closing thoughts? This episode has been like melting my face off today.
Yeah, so I was teasing there should be a call to arms. Craig wrote that article about 5 years ago. I posted on Twitter. And sadly, this isn't going to happen because it's just too divided, right? It's obvious where we're going. If folks if they want to keep their head in the sand, do that, fine, whatever. But where we're going is actually the future that all these people that came here wanted, right?
Right. Some
folks got dogmas about the price, shit coins, NFTs, JPEGs, whatever. It's very clear the market's already decided. If you want to sit there and say, well, I thought Team A should have won the Super Bowl, you can say that and cry. It doesn't matter, right? You can be like the Cordels right now, just crying about we can't, all this stuff.
Yeah.
Because we're so lean, we can't afford to work on dumb stuff. So what I mean by dumb stuff is stuff that nobody wants or asks for, right? Because for example, this bitmap thing, man, it could be the winner, right? It could be the decider for BTC, because if there's a metaverse protocol and that's the one that gets adopted, they're not going to use another chain for it. Right. So the worse the gap gets, and I don't think it's an accident that gap has gotten wider. 2 weeks ago it was 800 to 1. I'm talking about BSV BTC price. Now it's 1,000 to 1. Because I said this today, the incentive is to actually convert your BSV for BTC and inscribe there, because that's where the money is. That is the incentive right now. There's no incentive to do the opposite because there's no money here. Sure, you can make some, but you can't, only if you're doing stuff you can't do there. And that is the core, right? We have to do something. It has to be similar in creativity, but we have to do something that they can't. And that's the only way we get ahead. We can't just copy. We have to innovate. Global order book is one of those things. Boost PAL could be another. Something that they cannot do, we have to do. If we just, enterprise adoption, which is nowhere to be found. If we go out, it's going to continue. People have to get out of this mentality that, there's some big baddie that's like holding me down. Those people never succeed in history, right? And the example I brought up about those 3 Anon guys, yes, someone could easily counter me and say, they did that, but no one else is going to be able to repeat that. Well, that's just silly, right? Because how many kids play basketball thinking, I want to be like Michael Jordan?
Right.
I guarantee you LeBron thought he wanted to be better than Michael Jordan, right?
Right. And he couldn't do it.
He tried.
Yeah, for sure.
So the fact that 3 people have done it so fast, and like I said, it hasn't even been 150 days.
Yeah.
I think on the 23rd it'll be 150 days, and all this has happened, and it's not going to stop. It's not going to stop.
Interesting. So do you not financial advice, but do you just ape into every new thing the second it starts to leak across social media?
I won't say what people should do, but I'll say that if you did that, you probably don't have to work again.
Yeah.
If you had done that. And that's the thing, is no one is selling to you, right? You are literally creating. It's called inscribing. It's like going to a cave wall and drawing, and you're just paying the BTC miners a fee. So that's why there's no scam. It's different if you go out there, if we were talking about buying some shit coin, that's completely different. No, we're talking about literally creating according to the rules of this protocol. That's what we're talking about.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Joshua, we got to wrap up, unfortunately, but it has been, I think this one's going down in the books, man. This was a really good episode, and not for any reason other than the fact that I think it was just honest and just fair, and and just having a real conversation about the state of things and what's actually interesting. And like, frankly, right when this Ordinals thing came out, I was super supportive because it's like, hey, these are the things that I care about in regards to Bitcoin. And if the culture starts to shift that way, that is ultimately a good thing. It's like hearing that some other country, like when you cringe if you hear like, we're Americans, right? So when I see like, oh, America's number like 6 on the Global Freedom Index, like, is it a bad thing? Like, well, it indicates that maybe I don't want to live in this country anymore, but it's ultimately a good thing, right? Like that more people or more jurisdictions are saying like, hey, maybe these ideals and these ideas and these things are good. And ultimately that's what I've tried to stand for really since the beginning of this thing, is that like, hey, Bitcoin should be a free and open and competitive ledger of things that matter. And people gave me the finger and kicked me out of groups and told me I was wrong, or told me I was a scammer, or told me it wasn't possible for a long time. And well, now I've been vindicated. But Josh, thank you. I always appreciate you. I appreciate your feedback and everything else.
Thanks, man.
All right, everybody. So that's that. We'll wrap on that. Alex, do we have like another ad or anything to play on the way out? Yeah, we're going to do it. We're going to pay the bills around here a little bit. So everybody, thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, hit the alert bell so you do not ever miss when we pop on, pop off, or do all the other stuff that we pop toward. I'm Kurt Wuckert Jr. Signing off and saying thank you, everybody, for watching the CoinGeek Weekly Livestream. And do not ever forget that the real goal, the motivating factor of all these things, is for us to be good to each other. And so I leave you with that. Goodbye.
This is buybsv.com, the quick and simple way to buy Bitcoin SV. You can't miss it. It says a quick and simple way to buy BSV on buybsv.com. It's safe and secure. Within an hour, you'll own BSV digital assets, which means it's so quick and simple. So if you want to buy BSV, use buybsv.com. It does exactly what it says.